I, 27M, met my fiancée, 25F, 3 years ago when she came into the bar where I worked as a bartender. We hit it off immediately, and within a year, we were living together. 6 months ago, I proposed, and everything seemed perfect. We were set to marry in 3 months. But 2 weeks ago, everything began to change. She started working late more often, which was unusual for her job as an administrative assistant. Her phone was always face down, and she took calls in another room. At first, I dismissed it as wedding stress. But soon, red flags became impossible to ignore. She changed her phone's password, claiming it was due to spam calls, and I caught her smiling at her phone late at night, quickly putting it away when I entered the room. The breaking point came one night when I overheard her on a call in the shower. I was nearby grabbing towels when I heard her giggling and saying, "I can't wait to see you too. Yes, I'll wear that outfit you like." She assumed the shower noise would cover her voice. That night, while she slept, I checked her phone, a line I never thought I'd cross. Her new password was her ex-boyfriend's birthday. What I found shattered me. She'd been texting her ex, who had recently moved back to town. Their conversations started innocently, but soon turned flirty, then explicit. They'd already met for coffee 3 times and were planning a romantic night at a hotel. She lied to me, saying she was visiting her sister in another town. I took screenshots of the messages and forwarded them to myself. The next day, I called in sick to work and contacted her parents. They'd always treated me like family, especially her father, who had welcomed me warmly. When I showed them the messages, her mother broke down in tears, and her father was livid. Together, we devised a plan. On the day of her planned rendezvous, she packed an overnight bag, kissed me goodbye, and promised to bring back pastries from her sister's favorite bakery. Once she left, I waited an hour and then drove to the hotel with her parents. I'd arranged everything with the hotel manager, a mutual friend, who gave us access to the adjacent room. At 8 p.m., the manager confirmed they had checked in and ordered champagne and dinner. We waited another hour before making our move. Her father knocked on their door. We could hear music and laughter inside. After a minute of knocking, the music stopped and the door opened. She stood there in lingerie, barely covered by a hotel robe. The look on her face, shock, horror, and shame, will stay with me forever. Her ex tried to hide in the bathroom, but her father's booming voice stopped him. "Get out here. If you're man enough to sleep with an engaged woman, you're man enough to face her family." The next 20 minutes were chaos. Her ex blamed her, claiming she said she was unhappy with me. She blamed him, insisting he manipulated her. Then she turned to me, crying, begging me to forgive her, claiming it was a mistake and that she still loved me. Her father silenced everyone by reading their messages aloud, the ones I had forwarded. Every lie, every flirtatious exchange, every detail of their plan. Her ex tried to slip away, but I blocked the door. "You helped destroy what would have been a marriage," I told him. "The least you can do is face the consequences." That's when she switched tactics. She started accusing me of violating her privacy by checking her phone. Her father shut that down immediately. "You lost any right to privacy when you decided to cheat on the man we welcomed into our family as a son," he said firmly. Her mother, who had been silent until then, finally spoke up. Her voice trembled with emotion. "We raised you better than this. You've not only betrayed your fiancé, but also this entire family's trust." Then came her desperate attempts to salvage the situation. She promised to cut off all contact with her ex, suggested couples counseling, and even offered to postpone the wedding until she could prove herself trustworthy again. Her ex, clearly uncomfortable with her pleading, tried to edge away, making it clear he wanted no part of the drama. That's when I revealed the final piece of information I'd been holding back. "While you were planning this little evening," I said, pulling out my phone, "I was busy too. I've already contacted all our wedding vendors, the venue, the caterers, the florist." I explained the situation and canceled everything. The color drained from her face. We had already paid deposits for most things, and her parents had covered a significant amount for the venue. "The vendors were surprisingly understanding," I continued. "Some have offered partial refunds because of the circumstances. A few are keeping the deposits, but Your parents agreed it's a small price to pay to discover your true character before the wedding. Her ex seized the opportunity to escape. This is between you guys, he said, grabbing his jacket. I'm out of here. He tried to glance back at her, but she wasn't even looking at him anymore. Her eyes darted between me and her parents, realizing how completely her carefully constructed lies had unraveled. You can stay here for the night, I told her. I'll be at our apartment. Well, my apartment now, packing your things. Her father added, your mother and I have agreed to store your belongings at our house until you figure out your living situation. You can stay with us temporarily, but only until you find your own place. We need time to process this betrayal. The disappointment in his voice was palpable. She started to protest, but I cut her off. The lease is in my name, I said coldly. I've already spoken to the landlord. You have 30 days to officially remove your things, but I want you out sooner. Consider this your formal notice. As I turned to leave, she made one last desperate attempt.
Please, she begged.
At least talk to me privately. We can work this out. I looked at her, really looked at her for what I knew would be the last time. There's nothing to work out. You didn't make a mistake. You made a series of calculated decisions. You chose to contact your ex. You chose to meet him secretly. You chose to plan this night. You chose to lie to me about visiting your sister. Every single one of those was a conscious choice. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork and logistics. True to my word, I packed her things that night, carefully, despite my anger. Her parents picked everything up the next day. She spent the first week calling and texting me incessantly, alternating between apologies, accusations, and pleas for another chance. I blocked her number. Word spread quickly through our social circle. She tried to spin the story in her favor, but I had evidence, screenshots, hotel receipts, and even witnesses in her own parents. Most of our friends sided with me. Those who didn't, I was happy to lose them. 3 months later, on what would have been our wedding day, I took a solo trip to a beach I'd always wanted to visit. Watching the sunset, I felt nothing but relief. Relief that I had discovered the truth before marriage, before kids, before our lives became truly intertwined. Her parents still keep in touch occasionally. They told me she's moved to another city to start fresh. Her ex ghosted her completely after that night at the hotel. Last I heard, she's in therapy, finally facing the consequences of her actions.